So this video is going to be a beginner's guide to Darkest Dungeon. If you notice, I am 53 weeks in on this campaign. This is my 4th campaign through. One thing I do want to add at the start of the game is the DLC. These are the DLCs that are currently available for the original Darkest Dungeon. And the classes, the Musketeer, the Flagellant, and the Shieldbreaker, you should definitely add. They're all very good. Shieldbreaker gives you enemies. The other two do not. However, the enemies that the Shieldbreaker brings are specific to its mini-game mechanic, which I can explain at a later date. Districts is a valuable system, but you're not going to be really using it until the end game. It's pretty good, but it's a very end game based goal, and so this build is going to be designed around a long game. This build is not going to be based around speed running the game in 99 weeks as quickly as possible. Now, the two actual DLCs that give you some major content, that being Crimson Court and the Color of Madness. Color of Madness, I recommend running. This is something that you can run relatively easily. There's no penalty for retreating from this at any point, so it's a fairly easy objective to add on. It does provide a nice challenge. It does provide another currency. It does provide another reward. So it's not too bad to add. Crimson Court, I do not recommend you play through on your first run if you're a new player. If you're a returning player, I don't recommend you play through it on your first run. This is something that you pretty much only want to run if you're experienced. Even on lower difficulty settings, this is a very difficult DLC to play around. It's not the worst DLC to play around, but it can be very annoying. It's good for damage output, but it's when you get afflicted with the blood, but it's very time consuming to have to do. So, I want to let that sink in. So, if you're normally playing the game virgin, so to speak, this is your first playthrough, you're going to start off with two characters, Reynold and Dismas. With Reynold is a Crusader and Dismas is a Highwayman, which I'll be able to explain that little by little. You'll complete the first mission with them. When you spawn into the game, you're going to have access to just about nothing. Okay? Now, if you look at the bottom of the screen right here, where there are these currencies, okay? So we're going to start from the left and go to the right. First up is you have gold. Gold is something that you're going to spend to do things in town. So you're going to be spending that in the sanitarium in order to treat diseases and reinforce quirks. I'll get to that in a minute. You're going to be spending that money at the guild in order to upgrade your character's abilities and stats. You're going to be upgrading people at the blacksmith in order to get better armor and better weapons. You're going to be spending it at the trinket shop to get better trinkets. You're going to be spending that at the survivalist in order to buy new camping skills. And you're going to spend that at the tavern and the abbey in order to reduce the stress levels of your characters. You're also going to use that during the provision section of a run to buy provisions. If you notice, I have 6,300 in gold lying around. This is something that you specifically are going to want to keep a minimum of 4K in gold for. Each time you do a run in Darkest Dungeon, you need to buy provisions going into a fight. And the provisions that you buy cost gold. If you don't have enough money to buy provisions, you will fuck yourself over and you will die, or you will be absurdly stressed out. So a general rule of thumb, I try and keep 5,000. Some people only keep like 2,500, 3 grand. Some people keep a little too much. They keep like 7,500. You don't need that. Realistically, the only reason right here why I'm not spending it is I don't want to drop below the 5K, and there's nothing else I can really spend right now that's not 5K. Next up is that little portrait that the little blue head. That's 41. Those next 3 currencies, the 41, 3, and 4, we're going to call those head portrait scripts. These are currencies that are specifically used along with that shield icon to upgrade buildings. Now, some buildings, that being the Nomad Wagon and the Survivalist, are only upgraded with the shields. And you will want to upgrade those later on in the game. You don't want to upgrade those right away. I have upgraded the reduced trinket cost because occasionally you'll get some trinkets that pop in that are good. It's pretty rare that you do. In a little bit, I'll start working on increasing the wagon size, but for right now, that's not really that important. Most of the good trinkets you're getting you're going to be getting from missions instead. Survivalist is also very important to level up, but you really only need to upgrade it a couple of levels to get the cost down. I would say maybe get it up to 2 or 3. Once the amount of shields that you need is too high, there's no point to it. Every character can only run 4, they can only run 4 of these camping skills. You're only going to be using camping skills at a specific time. While they can be very valuable, they're not like, there's no upgrading camping skills like there is in the guild with your regular skills. So because of that, you're pretty much just going to buy the 4 that you want if you don't have the 4 that you want already, and be done with it. So after the Survivalist and the Nomad Wagon, which the Nomad Wagon we'll come back to, these 2 things you don't want to upgrade until later on in the game. When you first spawn into the game, your first priority should be upgrading your stagecoach. Okay, your stagecoach requires scripts as currency for these. It requires heads for currency here, and it requires portraits for currency here. And this is the most important thing you need to do, is you need to upgrade the size. Now, if you notice, I don't have any upgrade into experienced recruits. You will not need it. And I only have 1 upgrade into the stagecoach network, up to 3 heroes, because that's all you'll need. When you first spawn into the game, after you beat your first mission with Reynold and Dismas, you're only going to get 2 characters. Usually it's a Vestal and a Plague Doctor. This is supposed to give you the ideal team composition. It gives you a character, it gives you a basic set of characters that you're going to need for filling specific roles in the game. And then after that, you're free to experiment as you will. The roster right here on the right is your list of characters. This list of characters, if you see, I have them sorted out by class. There are 17 classes in the game, 14 in the base game, 3 is DLC, and there are 2 classes I do not choose to play. So when we cover the classes in detail, I will be able to explain to you what each of them does, but for right now, just know that there's 2 classes I do not play, I'm not a fan of. That initial team comp that they give you of a Crusader, who's supposed to be your frontline character, followed by the Plague Doctor, who's supposed to be more of a backline character that is primarily there for buffing and debuffing. You have the Vestal, which is a backline character that's primarily for healing, and a Highwayman, that's a very flexible character that has close range and long range damage. At the start of the game, you're only going to have whatever skills they come equipped with. Now, the reason why they give you these characters is because the healer that you get comes equipped with at least a healing skill. Dismas has decent skills because he has Pistol Shot and he has Bleed Blade, so he can play close or long range. Reynold is primarily melee, doesn't have any real backline supporting options, and the Plague Doctor has mostly Blight, and I believe it starts with Incision skills. Alright, the first thing you want to do is you want to get your stagecoach maxed out to the 31. The reason why is at the start of their game, you're going to pretty much grab every character you can. Now, there's no more than 3 builds to a character, and there's 17 classes in the game. So, you generally don't want to be running more than 2 of a certain class. Sometimes you can run 3 of a class if you don't want to run something else. So, you know, if you look at what I have here, I don't run the Jester, and I don't run the Antiquarian, okay? Most of my characters, I have 2. There's a few that I only have 1 of, because there's not some variation in builds I can do. And there's a few of them that I have 3 of, because they're filling a specific role. The general roles you're looking to fill we'll cover when we get to the sections, but that's explaining why you want to figure out what characters you like, so once you have your barracks max level, you can start just filling in the pieces that you want in your kit. So this is your first priority to upgrade. This is where all of your portraits are going to go. Now, the other building that uses portraits is the guild and the tavern. The guild is the first thing that you want to upgrade. You want to max out instructor mastery as much as you can. Again, the reduced cost of skill training, you're going to want to increase this up 1 to no more than 3 levels. The reason for this is that by the time you're at the point in the game where you are upgrading it to the 4th or the 5th time, you'll be pretty flush with cash. And if you're doing it the way I did it, so what I do is I leveled up my characters evenly, and I would take excess gold and dump it into leveling up them 1 at a time. So if you notice, these characters right here are level 5. I haven't worked on upgrading their skills to the maximum yet. The reason why that is because each level that you progress, if you unlock everybody's level first before you purchase the next skill upgrade, it buys you some time to use your gold to purchase the things that you need, so that way there you're alternating, you're not scrambling, looking, like rushing to get gold. You'll be able to purchase things in a timely fashion. That's why I'm at week 53 and I'm at a pretty good place in town. Once you've finished upgrading the guild's mastery, all of your remaining portraits can go into upgrading the tavern. You're going to want to upgrade this, but you don't need to upgrade it right away. If you're good about managing stress levels, you won't require a lot of stress reduction. The main reason why you want to level up your stress reduction facilities is so that you have extra room and you have a reduced gold cost. Gold in late game is primarily used for quirk re-rolling more than anything else. This is why I haven't really upgraded. You're not really going to be buying the extra upgrade slots. If you know the characters that you want and you're not planning on letting too many of your characters die, then what you're going to do is you're going to be in a scenario where you're going to run out of things to spend gold on. You're going to be using, once you've upgraded the guild, and once you've upgraded the survivalist, and once you've upgraded with the blacksmith, all of your gold is going to be going to quirks at the sanitarium or trinkets at the shop. So, and provisions, obviously. So, you're really not going to need it. The next currency are scripts. Scripts upgrade blacksmith. And your main focus should be doing armor smithing and weapon smithing. You can upgrade the furnace a bit more because the blacksmithing costs are higher than normal. They're a bit higher than the other one. However, you will occasionally get some weapons or armor for free. So, some completing a side quest will occasionally give you that. However, you really don't need that last upgrade. It's not going to save you that much in the way of gold. If you notice, this right here is the one that I'm saving up for, the last weaponsmithing. If you have to choose between the two, I would prefer that you upgrade your armor first. Armor upgrades dodge and HP by default. Upgrading and having a higher health pool and a higher dodge chance is more important for survival in late game than damage, because you can score crits and you can deal damage over time. If you build your team right, those are going to be more valuable assets than healing. So, once you're done with scripts, the little script things, you're really not going to need them for anything else, so you can prioritize saving those for the building districts, which I'll get to in a moment. So, the heads are used for upgrading these two buildings, which is the Abbey and the Sanitarium. The Abbey is a religious version of the Sanitarium, and similarly, you're going to want to upgrade this little by little. If you notice, I have the first round of upgrades here, mainly for the increased stress recovery. This is specifically for one class. The Flagellant can only use the Penance Hall for stress release, and he significantly needs the boost in stress recovery. It's also quite expensive to do. The main place you want to upgrade is the Sanitarium. If you've noticed, I have Treatment Library. What this does is this reduces the quirk treatment cost by 50%. Quirks are quite expensive. We'll get into it in a moment, but they are a very valuable part of your kit. The medical devices reduces the treatment facility. This reduces the cost for treating diseases and lets you knock out multiple diseases at a time. This is very helpful. Early game, you lose a lot of money in disease cost because it costs 1,000 or 1,500 per disease, and you're only really treating one disease at a time. So if people have multiple diseases, which are indicated by the little symptom right here, some of these can be debilitating. This right here is a debilitating disease, believe it or not, in a longer dungeon. Less health, less damage, less accuracy really hurts your ability to play the game effectively with a certain character. For tankier classes that are frontline type classes, they can't take that HP loss at all. That will kill them. For backline characters that tend to be squishier, anyway, they can take the HP loss. They don't care about that, but losing something like damage is much more impactful to you. Or speed. The last one here with the patient cells is specifically for giving you extra room here, and that's what I'm saving up for now, is this last one for treatment ward. It is very important that you upgrade the Sanitarium first. The only reason I have the other base set of upgrades in the Abbey is because I forgot the 60 head cost, if I'm being completely honest. But you need to upgrade this. So, diseases are obviously important. Generally, I don't want to bring somebody along with me unless they have a disease. So let's talk about quirks. Quirks is very important. Similarly, by the way, the Tavern, once you're done with the upgrading the Sanitarium, you can upgrade the Abbey afterward. Let's talk about quirks. What are quirks? Alright, so, I'm on PS4, controller, press square, brings up your little menu right here. This is where you can change your character's name, this is where you can customize their color, this is where you can dismiss them if you want to, this is where you check your stats, right? This is good right here. This is your equipment with your trinkets. This is resistances, which go up and down based off of your various stats. This is where you change your camping and your combat skills. We'll get to all that shit later. Quirks, right here. Every character has a good and a bad list of quirks. So, the bad list of quirks are supposed to be debuffs. If they have this skull icon, that means it has been reinforced. That means it will pop up more frequently, and it will cost more to get removed. The ones without them are minor quirks. Now, if specifically looking at Reynold, we'll use Reynold as an example. What these three quirks, the 10% disease resist, means that you have a higher chance of acquiring diseases. If you look at what my base disease cost is, my base disease was 30%, so the minus 10% drops me down to 20. Basically, anytime I would catch a disease, I do. Meaning, he's in the shop a lot for diseases, unless you can cure them somehow. Curious is a unique modifier where occasionally the character will auto-ride your ability to interact with an object. When characters do this for the curios in the environment, like loot drops and things like that, they will either trigger the fail on the coin toss automatically, or the reward, if you can't fail it, will be much less. So for example, if it's a locked mechanism The fail attempt on it is you cut yourself on it and you suffer bleed. The pass on it is loot. A normal pass on it, if it was loot, is, let's say, 500 gold and maybe some type of either a trinket or some building currency, right? With this, what'll happen is if you fail it, you'll get the cut, which you have a higher chance for. And if you succeed, you'll get something like 100 gold and no building currency or trinket. So these can be quite annoying to deal with, especially if they're triggering things that you know you don't want to activate. Like, let's say you're triggering a carcass, which has an increased chance of getting diseases, and you already have a character that has disease resist. You can remove these at the sanitarium. However, most of the time, you're not going to be worried about removing quirks unless they're really bad. I'm talking kleptomania, antsy, bad humors, anything that's reducing your core stats, like minus 10% HP, minus 4 speed. I got slow reflexes, which was minus 4 speed on a highwayman. That's abysmal. That is terrible for that class. Now, what about positive quirks? Positive quirks are quirks that are buffs to the player. So, this one right here has this lock. That means I have reinforced that quirk, which costs a lot of gold. It costs even more gold than removing reinforced quirks. Usually, you're looking at about, at start of the game, you're looking at 6k for a single quirk. As you put money into it, you chop it down to the 3 to 4k range, which is okay. But this is what you want to do. Now, what's important when you're managing your quirks is that some of these quirks are utterly terrible. Let me give you a good example of somebody with some utterly terrible ones. I think it's this one right here. Alright, Last Gasp is okay. +1 speed if HP is below 50%. It is a squishier class, that's 24 HP. So that means that this class is going to have a bonus speed at 12 HP or lower, which you really want to get them off of. It's not bad, but it's not worth reinforcing. Photomania, this is 20% less stress if the torch is above 75. Out of all of the options that are here, I would probably most reinforce this. The torch being above 75 HP is okay. You'll want to keep your torch high in most cases. But the reason why, like, this is good is it reduces a lot of the stress penalties from walking in the environment or from certain types of enemy attacks. Enemies that lower the torch when they do their stress attack, like Stressful Incantation, this really doesn't help you on. That's why I don't have this reinforced. This gives you bonus to stress healing received. This applies to any stress healing from camping, any stress healing from character abilities like the Jester or the Houndmaster, or stress healing from like the events in town, like the Brothel or the Abbey. It's not really great. Same thing, this is minus 10% stress in the first place, so you just get 10% less stress. And then this one is 10% less stress in wards. Any of these that are specific, like bonus damage, bonus stress reduction in a specific region, are worthless. Because it's not like you're going to exclusively run this one character in wards the rest of the time. If you look at the negatives that they have are actually worse. -5 dodge, minus 10% accuracy versus blighted, plus 20% stress if HP is below 50%. These are very annoying quirks, but the reason why I don't chuck her into the shop to get her fixed is because of the fact that she doesn't have a strong enough buff for me to buff and nerf. You can do a buff and a nerf at the same time. So, as an example, if you are looking at this character right here, I am currently getting rid of Nervous Bleeder, and I am buffing Irrepressible. That's what she's in the shop for. You can take one out and buff one at the same time. The cost is obviously higher, but this is a very good strategy for fixing character quirks. Now, one thing that's important to note is whenever a character has 5 of each, they will, if they acquire another one, they will randomly re-roll one of these unprotected ones out. So sometimes if a character has 5 quirks, you have to decide if it's worth bringing them in for losing one. Now, most of the negative quirks I really don't care about unless there's something in particular I want. However, when you have 5 quirks, you know you can lose 1 or 2. Meaning, let's say I really want this unyielding, and I can't guarantee it's going to stay on me. I might choose to hold this character out, if possible, until I can get enough money to chuck him in the shop and get the unyielding locked in. You can also get multiple quirks on a character that are similar, but with differing values. So a great example is this character right here. I have her locked in because I'm getting... I forget what I'm getting. I think I'm getting unyielding on her leveled up. But she has plus 20% healing skills while camping. Another skill is plus 10% healing skills while camping, the stack. So if I were to lock this one in as well, she would just permanently have 30% healing skills while camping, which is pretty good, especially if you camp immediately after a very difficult fight and then just take advantage of the healing skills to get value out of that. So that's how the logistics of quirks work. Another reason why you want to focus on getting the patient cells up as quickly as possible if you can is there is an event called Caregiver Convention. There's a lot of town events that pop up after you complete a week, where when you complete these town event, when you complete a specific type of dungeon, you get a town event. Caregiver Convention is one you always want to try and go for if you can, because it makes the entire sanitarium free. Now, for the medical ward, this doesn't matter. Most of the time, you're not really going to need that many disease management. Like, for me in particular, once you have the second disease slot, you really don't care. Like, you really only need the 2 disease spots. But the 3rd quirk spot is very important. Because it's free, early game, this is immensely important to your early game success, because you're talking in early game, especially if you haven't leveled up the treatment library and the cost of quirk removal or quirk reinforcement, you're looking at 6k a quirk for reinforcing a quirk and 4 to 6k for removing a quirk. And there are debilitating quirks. I know, like, when I started this run, Reynold started with Kleptomania, and I had to run him for the first 3 missions in a row. Kleptomania means he will steal items, he will steal your loot, and he's stealing building materials, torches, food, gold. That is critical to your early game success. So this is the basics of the early game management. Now, 2 of the currencies that I haven't mentioned. We have the little crystalline currency at the bottom. This is used in the Nomad shop primarily. You hit R1 for PS4 at least. You get access to these trinkets. These trinkets are unique trinkets that you can buy with only that currency, and they are not affected by the reduced trinket cost. I want to mention this. So don't think you can buy reduced trinket cost and do that. When you come over to this guy, he is not affected by your upgrades at all. That's one of the main reasons why you don't want to invest too heavily. I just get the gold in there. Like, I want less gold just in case there is a decent trinket for a gold trinket. These do require a lot of shards, and this is mostly something you'll do for the end game when you're doing the Color of Madness a lot to get these shards up. But that's primarily an end game activity. The other thing we have is the building of districts. So let's cover the districts themselves. You'll need a blueprint, and you'll need these memory fragments. The memory fragments are earned from Color of Madness. The building layouts are dropped randomly from some mini-boss encounters you get in the environment. Each of these buildings is a building that you can build. Once you've built it, it's there. The gold cost on these is primarily low, with the singular exception of the Red Hook, which is just a massive mammoth that's basically like, okay, I bought everything in the game. You buy this to basically say, fuck you to the game, that you're rich. Believe it or not, the 25,000 gold's actually not the hard part. It is the 750 of the shields that's the hard part. But these ones right here that require the memories for, the main thing that's important is the mill. The mill is the #1 most important of these 4 buildings right here, which are only obtained from memories with the Color of Madness DLC. These aren't really that great right here. The orchard, basically, it gives you a buff to some of your consumables. Your herbs, which you use to remove debuffs, give you a disease resist buff. It's not great. The anti-venom, which removes your blight, gives you a blight resistance. That can be helpful to prevent a character from being re-blighted, but it's not the greatest in the world. The stress resist buff on the Londium is okay, similarly to the anti-venom, but the holy water doesn't matter. The geological study hall, which is gem stacking inventory, gets increased by 1. This is not really that impactful. It helps your gold intake a little bit, but it's not worth the 125 memories. The biggest thing that you are going to need by far is the mill. The mill is heroes no longer suffer random hunger checks. This means that once you have this unlocked, the only food you are going to need for a mission is for camping missions or for healing outside of combat. You are no longer going to need hunger checks in battle. And that can be quite debilitating, because for longer missions you have to bring more food, not just for camping but for hunger checks. When you get a hunger check, you need at least 4 food in your inventory per hunger check. Small missions, you're usually going to get 1 or 2 hunger checks. So if you bring 12 food, you're good. For medium missions, you need to bring more. You're going to get a minimum of 2 hunger checks, depending on what you're doing. So the longer a mission, the more food you need. This saves you some money, and this saves you some stress later on. So besides this, you have the other buildings. The bank is a very good investment if you can get it early game. Like if you finish with portraits relatively early, this is a pretty good benefit to give you. This means you'll get 5% gold per week based off of what you have in your inventory. This is a nice chunk of change, but it's not going to give you that great of a benefit unless you're really like just playing this for the long haul. Like if you're avoiding tackling the darkest dungeon and just playing the game as normal for fun, this can be a good benefit. Cartographer's Camp's not really that great. Torchlight being more beneficial. Basically this buffs the torchlight benefits. It's not really great. Basically it means you have reduced stress and an increased chance of surprising monsters. It's not really worth the cost on it. Then you have the granary. This is a very good investment. 15% bonus healing when eating. Basically it's going to give you about an extra point the majority of the time when you heal. So when you eat, you'll go from 1 to 2 for the most part, or from 2 to 3 if you're already at 2. The main benefit though is that some food is given to you for free every week when you go on a mission. This can really save you in gold cost later on down the line, because, you know, that stacks up mission to mission. Puppet Theater's okay. This reduces idle stress in town by 10 per week. Basically, this makes it so that if a character is right around 40 or 50 stress, you can kind of just don't need to put them in a recovery facility. You can kind of just leave them in town and come back to them later, and you'll be fine. Most of these buildings right here are specific to a specific class. So the House of the Yellow Hand, this gives you bonus crit for these classes. This is very good for them. The scouting chance isn't great, but the bonus crit is good. It's just a bonus effect you can get for that class. So highwaymen, bounty robbers, grave robbers, they get bonus crit. That's really what that is. For the Crusader, the Vestal, and the Flagellant, which are primarily support type classes, the Crusader and Flagellant are more offensive. The Vestal is more straight healing. The 10% to healing skills is very valuable, but it does require 200 scripts, which is relatively hard to get. I highly recommend this just for the Vestals alone. The stun resist is nice, but it's not really mandatory. It's not really the main reason you run this. Now, the Crusader doesn't get a lot of value out of the healing, but the Flagellant does. So, next up for the training ring, this is for the Arbalest, Musketeer, Houndmaster, and Shieldbreaker. This gives you a bonus 4 accuracy and a bonus 10% max HP. The only one that's taking advantage of that max HP is really the Man of Arms, because it makes him tankier. The Arbalest and Musketeer and Houndmaster are primarily benefiting from the 4 accuracy. So, if you run Man of Arms a lot, it's nice. It's not really valuable for the accuracy for the other 3. They're fairly accurate. The Antheum is based around Blight and debuff skills. This benefits the Occultist, Plague Doctor, and Antiquarian. The Antiquarian and Occultist get the debuff, whereas the Plague Doctor is getting the Blight. This is probably one of the least impactful buildings in the game. The Knowledge Curios healing 15 stress can be helpful in longer missions, especially because it benefits those 3 classes, but those 3 classes have to be the one that interacts with the Knowledge Curio in the first place. The Blight skill chance on Plague Doc is nice, because this can help overcome some of the Blight resistances of enemies. The debuff skill chance really isn't that great. I don't like Antiquarian, but it is helpful on her. On the Occultist, it's not really great. He only has like 2 skills that take advantage of that primarily. The Performance Hall is not hard to do. It's specifically for the Jester, and it makes the Jester a little bit better in combat. I'm not really that great for it. The Outsider's Bonfire gives you 2 additional respite points if you have at least 1 Abomination, Hellion, or Leper in your party. I'm still not sure what this does, by the way. I've played this. I don't know what it does. I'm assuming, from what I can tell, it gives you an extra empty room. That's what I think it does. So basically it spawns an additional empty room in the map. I don't really know. But it says respite points. I haven't figured that out. It's not like there's a healing station. But based off of the cost, everything except the Performance Hall here is going to be mostly late game grinds. You're talking about, in most cases, outside of the bank and the granary, it is 100 or more of any of your building currencies to really take advantage of it. Alright, I'm going to cut the video here, and we're going to